Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be on expired makeup. I had a comment on a video recently where a very nice lady asked me whether or not I still used my old makeup. I think it was probably on like palette like this, because I did a video where I talked about palettes I forgot about, and I think this was included. And so she had a comment whether or not I still use the expired makeup. And I think I've gotten this question before, and I think I have done a video on makeup expiration dates, but it was a while ago. So we're going to do an updated one. So if you're curious whether or not I use my expired, like these palettes right here are all expired. How expiration dates work with makeup, whether or not it's safe to use, then just keep on watching. Make sure you're subscribed. And yeah, we're going to jump into it right now. Okay, so let's start off with expiration dates. Now, everything you buy will have an expiration date on it, whether it's on the actual palette itself or a lot of times it'll be on the box. Like, I pulled this out as an example. This expires in March of 2022. So this has a long shelf life. It does have a pump, so it's sealed. Things that come with a pump like this are generally going to have a longer shelf life because you're not putting bacteria in it. Essentially, it's relatively airtight. Like I said, you're not dipping anything in it. So this has a longer shelf life. And then like this is the Revlon Color Stay Powder. It's a little bit dusty. This has a shelf life of 24 months. Now I know I haven't had this. We're coming up on a year because I know when I had to go up to my grandpa's funeral, I purchased this, and that was in February of last year. So this is a year, so it technically is still good for a year. Now keep in mind that that expiration date is from when it's been opened. So if you buy this and it's sealed and you keep it in a drawer, obviously it's going to stay longer. Something you do need to keep in mind is sometimes it's something like this. The company will manufacture it and it'll sit in a warehouse for a year or two before somebody buys it. Companies are supposed to go through and do quality control. I think Makeup Geek is a good example where she's been very open and vocal about they do go through their warehouse and rotate stock and try and clean things out. Companies don't always do that. I did buy a primer years ago. I got it from Sephora. It was the Urban Decay, the Hangover primer. It smelled from the time that I got it. So I think it's one of those cases where it had probably sat in the warehouse for a long time, and then it sat at the store for a long time before somebody bought it. I should have returned it, never did, because it never smelled right. It never performed like I think it was supposed to. And so you can get expired products because that expiration date is from the time the product's been opened. So companies can essentially have this sit in their warehouse for 4 or 5 years theoretically and still sell it, because like I said, that expiration date reflects the shelf life of the product from when it's been opened. It's not a sell by expiration date, so keep that in mind. It is possible to get expired products technically, just because they've been sitting in the warehouse, but because they are sealed, they're still good. So there's a gray area as far as how long this is good from the time of manufacturing. Chemicals do break down over time. They become less effective, less potent. So you don't really know how old a product is unless you look at batch codes. Now, batch codes are going to be on the box. I don't have any to show you, but there are like websites if you want to look up a batch code, and that will tell you when it was developed in the lab to give you an idea of how old that actual product actually is. Okay, now getting into eyeshadow palettes. Like this one says it's very, very small, and you're going to see yourself. There's a little jar that says 12 months with a lid. So that means when this is opened and used, it's good for 12 months. Now this palette came out, I want to say in 2016. So it's old. Mine still works. Is it safe to use on your eyes? I would say probably technically no. Nobody's going to tell you, yes, go ahead and use expired eyeshadow on your eyes. Now, I am aware that all of my palettes that are expired. And so it's kind of at your own risk situation. I use all of mine, all of my expired palettes I use. Eyeshadows will mold. They will start to smell funny if they like turn. That's generally, and the same thing goes with like stuff like this. I will keep products until they turn, essentially. I had foundations when I did my declutter that I'd had for, I don't know, 4 years that I finally threw away. I only used them when I did like costume makeup. They were like super light foundations. But I finally threw them away. I will keep things until they smell bad or they look weird or they separate. Same thing with eyeshadows. I, knock on wood, haven't had any palettes mold. I have seen cases where people's shadows have started to mold. Obviously, don't use it if it molds. Throw it away. I won't give my expired palettes away because they are expired. I use them on my face. My face is used to them, I think. I'm aware that they're expired, but I'm not going to give them away just because they are expired. The reason I keep them until they turn is because this is going to end up in a landfill. This plastic packaging does not break down. Like this will sit in a landfill for probably 100 years before this sucker breaks down. So I would rather just hold on to it and try and get some use out of it until the eyeshadow's hard pan. I did buy a used, the Manny MUA and Makeup Geek palette collab, and I depotted it and put it in a Z palette because the cranberry shade that was in there hard panned, like dried out, was hard. You couldn't get any pigment. So I depotted the whole palette and threw that one shade away. So I use eyeshadows until they hard pan. Same thing with this. This electric palette is over 6 years old. I tried to look up dates when these two were released and I couldn't find anything, but I know these are up, like these are getting into like old status, like over 6 or 7 years. Again, these shadows work. I bought this on Poshmark used. The brush was still in it. The lady had only used it a handful of times. The shadows still perform. There's nothing wrong with them. So I'm going to keep it. Again, this plastic packaging does not break down. I think this was the other palette, and this is one that I've gotten comments on because this is an old palette, like probably 7 or 8 years old. My friend Lauren gave it to me. I still use it because I had one lady, she was surprised I still had it because of how old this is. Again, I tried to find the exact date that this was launched and I couldn't find it. But I know Urban Decay hasn't released these like zipper pouches in a hot minute, but the shadows in here are all still creamy. They are all pigmented. They still work. Again, it doesn't smell. Nothing's molded. Nothing's hard panned. So I still use it and it's fine because the one comment that I got, the lady was kind of bummed that she'd gotten rid of hers because you can't get it unless you buy it on Poshmark, but mine's still fine. Yeah, I will use, I think I'm a little different with eyeshadows because it's a powder. I don't swatch a lot. I do more now because I do tutorials, but like I try to not put my fingers in it because then obviously you're contaminating it more. But powders, I think, last longer than liquids do. This is the Kathleen Lights and Morphe collab. This one's like 5 years old too. And again, it is in cardboard packaging, so it will break down a little bit easier than the plastic, but it is old. So I don't feel comfortable giving it away, but the shadows still work. So this is one that I will keep. Like this shade, I think is one that's going to go before the others just because it's starting to feel a little drier, but it's still got pigment. So again, I will keep this until the shadow's completely hard pan and I can't use it anymore just because it's old. So that's the main reason I don't, because like I said, I'm not comfortable giving away expired makeup. And 2, like I said, once I throw these away, they are going to sit in a landfill till the end of time. So I keep them and yes, I do use them, but I am aware that they are expired. So it is, your eyes are sensitive. Use expired things at your own risk. 2 more examples would be like my ColourPop lippy sticks. Like this is Date Mate. It's a Matte X. This is from the Hello Kitty collection. So this is old. I don't think that there's an expiration date on this. There would have been one on the box, and the same thing with this lip liner in Viper. I know that these are at least 4 years old. This one's probably not quite as old because I got this later on, but I know this one's at least four years old. When I went through and did my declutter, I did throw my Aquarius lippy stick away because it was starting to smell funny. The lippy sticks specifically, and I'm getting it on my nose, will smell when they turn. So I did throw my Aquarius one away only because it was starting to smell funny, because that one had kind of a caramely scent to it when it was new. So, but again, lipsticks will start to smell like cheap crayons when they go. I had I think it was a Makeup Forever, and I was really sad too because it was a really pretty like mauvey pink nude shade, but it smelled like crayons. So when your lipsticks start, unless they had that smell from the get-go, which again could be something that sat in the warehouse for a long time, cheaper lipsticks sometimes will have a little bit of a waxy smell, but I'm talking like stinky crayon smell, usually is an indication that the lipstick has turned. So that's when, again, I will throw them away, or if they mold. Same thing with lip gloss, when they start to smell or separate or look weird. So I do not pay attention to expiration dates, especially on like powders. Like I will keep this until I know I've had powders. I've got powder in my drawer. I know it's like 4 or 5 years old, but it's powder. I use it with a brush. Again, as long as it doesn't smell, just because again, these plastic packages, like if you Google beauty products in landfills, like you will be mortified. It'll make you not want to buy makeup products ever again. Because the stuff does not break down and it just will sit there forever. So I try to use things as long as humanly possible, or I do declutter my stuff to pass it along so that somebody else can use it, so that it does not end up in a landfill. So that, especially like I said with the eyeshadow palettes, that's the main reason that I keep them, because that's where they're gonna go, and it's just kind of sad and unfortunate. So yeah, you just have to keep an eye on products. Like I watched one lady, she decluttered hers because she said hers wasn't performing well. Mine's still pigmented and the eyeshadows still look really good. Still smells like vanilla, doesn't smell weird. The shadows, like nothing burns or itches or anything. So just keep in mind, if you are somebody that has sensitive eyes, sensitive skin, I would maybe be a little more mindful of it. Like I said, I'm aware that they're expired and I still use them, but that's because I haven't had any problems with it. And then another thing I would mention is I do have lip liners that I use as eyeliners. Like I'm wearing one today. It's from LA Girl. It's in the shade Pop. It's their hot pink lip liner. I use it as an eyeliner, but the lip liners that I use as eyeliners, I don't put on my mouth. They are eyeliners. So that is something else that, yes, they are universal. But again, if you're somebody with sensitivities, I would be mindful of using a lip liner in your eye because they're not technically eye safe. But like I said, I don't go back and forth. The ones, I have a pink and a purple that are technically lip liners, but they are only used on my eyes. I don't use them on my mouth. I have dedicated lip liners and then dedicated eyeliners, if that makes sense. So you just have to keep in mind your sensitivity levels and just keep an eye on the products. Because like I said, when stuff goes, it'll smell, it'll mold, it'll separate. The eyeshadows will not be as pigmented. They'll stop performing. Like I know the Morphe palette is not as pigmented as it was 5 years ago, but I mainly use this when I do like my sugar skull tutorials in Halloween. Like this is mainly for costume makeup. And like I said, I'm not comfortable giving this to anybody because of its age, but it still works fine on my face. So that's why it's still here. So yes, you can still use expired makeup. Yes, I do still use my expired palettes, because that was the main question, is if I actually use my expired palettes. Yes, I do. I am aware that they're expired, so I just kind of keep an eye on it. But so yeah, you just have to be mindful and kind of watch your products. And then also keep in mind that you can get things that are technically expired that are brand new. Depends on, you have to go in and start checking back batch codes if you're really concerned about it, because products can sit in the warehouse. It's not against the law. The regulation on cosmetics is kind of weird, so it's not illegal for makeup to be formulated, packaged, and then sit in a warehouse for 3 years before it's sold. It's not illegal. So that's interesting too. So if you are somebody that has reactions, that may be something you want to start checking, is because there are apps that you can put in the batch code and it'll tell you when it was manufactured. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you have any other questions about expired products. Leave those questions down below. I do not mind answering them. If I have a bunch of questions, I'll do a part 2, depending on if I didn't answer everything that everybody's curious about. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you being here. Make sure you're subscribed before you leave so that you can come back and be part of my YouTube family. I would really appreciate it. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. And hopefully I will see you in another video very soon. Bye, everybody.